think this is important. Now, we've talked about this philosophically a little bit. Let's kind of go into the framework, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, we know how frameworks are substitutable. You can replicate them. It could be 4 phases, 5 phases, 6 phases, but
or even 8.
8 or 12 and a half and 3/4. But what we as when we're communicating and trying to create an awareness in a pragmatic, like, how are we going to apply this? Yes, they say that design thinking is an iterative process, but initially it's a linear one. What is the approximate sequence that has iterations in it? What do we have to? What if I say, okay, where do I start? What's the first phase of design thinking?
Before going to the phases, let's move a little part out. There are 2 main areas.
Mm-hmm.
So design thinking says there's a problem area.
Mm-hmm.
In German, it's Problemraum.
Mm-hmm.
Where you just identify what's the real problem.
I like the German word because it says it's a room.
Yes, it's a room.
Which gives you a kind of parameter and a focus.
Space. Yeah, problem space, actually.
Yeah.
So where you really get an understanding about the problem, you go to interaction to potential users and you define a design challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So you really do market research, you work with the people to really understand what the whole thing is about. Second part then, in German it's Lösungsraum. So it's like the solution area, solution scene, where you start ideation, creativity tools, methods, you do prototyping and you do testing. And of course, those 2 big phases, they interact because what you test has to fit to the users and up and down. So these are the 2 main philosophical things to really have a problem area and a solution area.
Okay.
And then we have...
which creates focus and structure, right?
Structures and focus, yeah. Very simple.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, we can make 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 25, or even 365.8 phases. I'm a fan of dividing it into 6. 6
to
phases.
The power of pi? Just kidding.
Could be,
Yeah.
could be, but then it gets a little complicated because of the spin of the Earth.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I should think about that. So, roughly saying 6 phases, let's call it, yeah? So the one is called understand.
Yeah.
So to understand the problem, understand the key issue. So coming from we need more customers to what precisely does it mean?
Before you make assumptions, you should understand what the hell you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about facts and figures, it's research, it's work.
Yeah. There might be some uncertainty and some where you don't know, but at least even identifying what you don't know is a step forward. Yeah.
Question is, if I identify what I don't know, do I know it already?
I think, in project management, we often talk about the known known, the known unknown, and the unknown unknown, which is dangerous, right? I think there's always going to be a factor of unknown unknown, which is part of why we have iteration and agile approach or hybrid approach.
Okay, this we should discuss.
At a different podcast. Okay. He's telling me to shut up.
No. Okay, so first part was this understand phase.
Yeah.
Second, it's about called empathy. Okay, to building up the empathy. So really build up and connect and get an understanding about the users. Asking interviews, observing, shadowing, focus groups, be part of there and really get the problem and the pains especially. Third part now is to define. So really nail down one sentence. How can we solve from the persona? And we work now with personas. So it's a fictive avatar character, which really represents one part of the customer group. How can we support our persona in solving his or her problems? And why is this important? So for example, as an employee, how can we make it become the most attractive employer? And how can we solve your daily issues you have on getting your bikes repaired, your car repaired, and so on, and you don't have time for that? So really, first 3 phases. Understand, empathize, define. It goes on then into the solution by ideation phase, so to cast as many ideas as possible, which then are clustered. So do they support our problem actually and help get rid of the problem? And can they afford it? So is it easy to put into
So
action?
there's a trade-off factor, right?
Yes. That makes sense. Fourth phase, then it's about prototyping. So to create some easygoing prototypes. Sixth phase then is testing. Okay, to test and to check does our target group, our customers, our persona actually can live with this or not.
Okay.
And then it goes back and forward.
Okay.
Back, forward.
Okay. I would like to maybe, thanks for that framework. It helps me understand it better.
Appreciate it.
The ideate phase, because let's go back to that original statement. How often does the client really know what they want? right?
Never.
Sometimes maybe you can dock onto basic pains.
Yes,
but the technical solution is actually often in the hands of the people who know.
True, but it's not so much about the client. So it's really about at the end, design thinking, talking about the users at the end of the day. And design thinking now makes a difference between customers or clients and users on the other hand. Because very often you use services, you are waiting for a bus in a shelter actually, and you're not customer because you maybe have not paid a ticket. You're just there.
I can think of a real life example. One of my favorite clients that I do work with, SAP, right? They have this dilemma. A very reputable company with a great product and a great services package that they offer for their clients. One of their biggest challenges is that it's primarily IT, and most IT people think agile. We're getting this. We're going to invent it as we go. And SAP goes, no, from an economical perspective, we have addressed certain user cases and problems in advance. We've thought about it 100 million times. We've developed products that are specified. Somewhere in the user experience, we've had to design a flow. And we can't reinvent it for every client because every adjustment to a complex system is exponential and expensive, right? So one of the classic conversations that SAP has is they listen, we have best cases, okay? If you listen to us, you're gonna have to maybe change the way you work a little bit.
But it pays off.
And it's going to be a little bit painful in the beginning, but midterm, long term, you'll have a much more solid system. We'll eliminate some of the problems that you already have right now that you're just used to, right? But there's a little bit of give and take, right? That's something that I guess would happen very strongly in the ideate phase, right? Because even SAP will sometimes, from a very powerful client, they'll say, no, it has to interface with our internal system, and it's okay that we have to program some kind of connection, which is not part of the standard package.
Yes, so one of the ideas in the ideation phase could be, we sell only certain number of products, take it or leave it, very black and white saying, yes. But in general, ideation means really to come up with as many ideas as possible. Realistic, unrealistic, fitting to business, not fitting to business. It's really about many people together, build on each other's ideas, and this spin of creativity.
The reason I brought up SAP is because you would think, well, if SAP has done this process a million times and come up with their solution, and there's not really that much you can tweak on it, a lot of people say, well, then design thinking doesn't apply there, and I would disagree. The design thinking is still there. You still interact with the client, but what you're doing, since there's this famous saying, thought is not said is not heard is not understood. Sometimes when we communicate our needs and our desires, first of all, they're not very precise. We haven't thought them through. Sometimes as a vendor, you have to have patience and said, although I've thought it through 100 times, in our relationship, we're still going through the user experience. We can still use the design thinking playbook to go through the tools. And then when we get there, we can say, this is what you've identified as your problem. This is what you've identified as your potential solution.
Does it fit?
Let me show you what we've got. And if you take this solution, it'll be fast and cheap. If you want a different thing, it's going to be expensive and slow. Right? So that's a trade-off.
Which is in general not the best option.
Yes, but what you're doing is you're giving your customer the opportunity to engage with you, and they feel respected because I've been given options. I wasn't said yes. You didn't tell me yes when it was impossible, and you didn't say no when you didn't want to do it. You said yes, but, right? So that's also part of the design thinking process.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a way of thinking. It's a part of mentality actually. It's a shifting towards how can I make my users, it's not about happy, because just happy doesn't bring any money. It's about creating a wow effect, creating an experience that they leave you and just say, wow, that was really, really, really great experience.